And now let me go into the matter at hand. Yesterday, I was trying to prepare myself for this message. And my preparations first takes place in my mind. I don't set out to just start the research. I run over what I would like to partake in my mind and try to put it together. And as I was in that process yesterday, I said to Brandon, I gave him some money and asked him to go across the street to get some snacks for me. And he said, Daddy, you know that shop has moved. I said, move? What do you mean by moved? He said, well, the people have migrated. Yes. And I set to thinking. It was on reflection that I realized that a number of the houses on my street are empty. When I first came to live there, almost all the homes were occupied with young families such as ourselves at the time. And the street wasn't a rowdy place, but it was vibrant. And as I sat thinking about it last night, I realized that, well, the house beside me is not occupied. There's nobody living there, but a neighbor turns on the lights in the evenings. For security purposes, I guess. A neighbor from next door does that. The house in front of that house, the family has migrated entirely. And the house beside that house, the family has migrated entirely, leaving one person there. And the story is the same right along the corridor. And presently, we are the only family that fully occupies a house on the entire street. And it's about 17, 18 houses on each side. And we are the only ones who still fully occupy. Most have either left entirely, sold the house, it's unoccupied, or they left behind one or two family members. A couple of the older persons have died, and nobody has come in to occupy. So we are the only ones that are really left there. And I thought about it. I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about how many other experiences I'd had like that. How many times I'd been attached to different surroundings, whether it be school, church, neighborhood, and after a time, people just drift away. People drift away for whatever reason. They just drift. Now, I spoke to a number of my neighbors in years gone by, and they were like a lot of Jamaicans from my era that thought that they would never live abroad and they would never want their children to grow up in that kind of environment. Whatever they did, they wanted to be in Jamaica. But something happened. Something happened, and they have given up on that dream and now gone wholeheartedly, most into Trump country. But they have given up. On Monday night, a very interesting thing happened. The coordinator for the meeting, the speaker earlier, was greeting everybody that was present at the start of the meeting, and he greeted somebody sitting in the audience, asked him how he was and so on, welcomed him to the CGI, but that person had been a baptized member for many years. He didn't know. That person had preceded him by many, many years. He thought it was a first-time visitor. So I had to tell him publicly that this was actually a person baptized some over 20 years ago. But He has been here for how long have you been here, Sister Angela, along with your family? 17 years. And that person really hasn't been about from before that. But while the person was here, they were attending services every week. They were a regular attendee. And that has been the case from the time that I've been here, some 27 years now. People have come, got attached to us as a group, were in attendance, regular attendance every week, and then, for some reason, they just stopped. As we prepare and approach Passover, there are several persons who were seated right here for years that don't even know that we are preparing for Passover. They have come, they have given their valuable contribution, they served, they didn't just sit. They served, and they were zealous for years. Some of them never missed a Monday meeting. They were at Sabbath service. Even if they felt ill, they passed through, if it's even to sit in the fire. But they did. They never missed a feast. They were here for years, some for 10, some for 15, even up to 20 in the time that I've been here. And now, some have left the congregation. Some have left the faith altogether. Some have left the Bible, and some have rejected the notion that there is a God. People who served, even people who are at the pulpit just as I am right now, imparting to you words, have reached a stage where they no longer believe in the existence of God. That should be frightening to all of us. At the very least, it should be a concern. Can that happen to me? I tell you what, us preachers, our main task is to give you hope. To build you up and to give you hope. Well, let me start by saying, it can happen to you. It can happen. The test of endurance is based on principle, not on personality. It takes living by some tried and tested principle. Now, some of these persons were mastering, not only mastering, but teaching others how to master those principles. Yet at some point, they failed. Turn with me to Ezekiel chapter 28. Ezekiel chapter 28. From verse 11. Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 11. The word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, sing a lament for the king of Tyre. Say to him, this is what the sovereign Lord says. You are the sealer of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. The ruby, the topaz, and emerald, and chrysolite, onyx, and jasper, the sapphire, turquoise, and beryl. Your settings and mounts were made of gold. On the day you were created, they were prepared. I placed you there with an anointed guardian cherub. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked about amidst fiery stones. You were blameless in your behavior from the day you were created until sin was discovered in you. In the abundance of your trade, you were filled with violence, and you sinned. So I defiled you and banished you from the mountain of God. The guardian cherub expelled you from the midst of the stones of fire. Your heart was proud because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom on account of your splendor. I threw you down to the ground. I placed you before kings that they might see you. By the multitude of your iniquities, through the sinfulness of your trade, you deserted your sanctuaries. So I drew fire out from within you. It consumed you, and I turned you to ashes on the earth before the eyes of all who saw you. All who know you among the peoples are shocked at you. You have become terrified and will be no more. The church teaches that this is referring to Satan. But if you look at the descriptions contained therein, this is a person that was better than me and better than all of you. This is a person that was created in perfection and walked in a perfect environment. Unlike us who have to go through so many travails day in, day out, and weren't born into perfection, this one was created in perfection and grown in a perfect environment. Yet, somehow did not endure. Yet somehow failed. What hope then is there for me and you? Can we overcome this? Or are we caught up in a fatal experiment? Are we caught up in a fatal trial? There are some principles, I said, that have to be practiced in order for us to have any chance. I won't go through all of them because time does not permit. Because there are so many things that can contribute to our fall. What do I mean by our fall? A rejection of the faith. So many things can contribute to it, but I want to focus on just a couple of them that is important. You and I are called to work together to fulfill the commission given to us by God, but also to help each other. Therefore, a key part of our success in staying the course is our associations. The people that we associate with. Who do we surround ourselves with? As I sat and thought about what my son told me yesterday, I thought more about life, the people that I had encountered over the years, how they had helped me, and how they had brought me down, and how the experiences, what I had learned from those experiences. Indeed, I'm at an age, 51 years old, I'm at an age where people tend to evaluate themselves more. Think about life. You have transitioned from youthfulness, and the next stage is old age. So you're in the middle now. Statistically speaking, you're in the middle now. And a study out of Britain said that the highest rate of suicide is among middle-aged males. Why is that? Because a lot of people are at a stage where they are evaluating their lives. Was it worth it? Did I achieve anything? Did I waste my youth? Is it too late? A lot of questions are asked by people at my stage of life. And interestingly, a lot of people in the church leave the church at the dawn of this stage of their life. People have to ask themselves, is this worth it? But these principles do not just apply to myself. They apply to all of us, our friends and associates. I realized that I had a number of persons influence me throughout my life. A number of persons influenced me. Some for the good, some for the ill. And the person who has influenced me most in the church would be our dear departed Pastor Boyne. But there was much more to our relationship than discussing doctrine and those things. A number of you might not know that, for instance, in the 90s, he and I were such ardent football fans that every Sunday morning we would watch Italian football. Yes, we were both supporters of AC Milan. Some of you don't know that. Yes, man, every Sunday morning we would follow that. We'd tune into Italian league. Italian? Yes, he was an ardent supporter of AC Milan like myself at the time. Yes, and we would be following those things. There was a depth to our friendship that was more than just the church member thing. I didn't as much as him, others did more. We went to a couple of old shows too and so on. But our relationship was multifaceted. Right? Our relationship was multifaceted. But one of the things that drew us together and drew me to him was a radical nature of how he lived his life and how he proclaimed the gospel. That helped to reinforce and to influence me. But I had other persons before him that were equally radical, if not more. They just didn't understand the gospel. And they helped to foster that kind of nature in me. The person I am today was largely because of the influences that I have had over the years. So influence is very, very important. In 1 Corinthians 15, and verse 33. 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 33 says, do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good morals. If you associate with the wrong influences, as well as you are doing now, you can easily fall off a cliff. And I've seen that. I've seen good people, one person in their circle, perhaps a leader, went off the boil and all the others just went over the cliff with them. Just gave up on their faith because of one person's change of direction. Everybody else has followed them over the cliff. In 1 Kings chapter 21, 1 Kings chapter 21. 1 Kings chapter 21, reading from verse 25. There had never been anyone like Ahab, who was firmly committed to doing evil in the sight of the Lord, urged on by his wife Jezebel. Sometimes it's not the persons that we know casually, but the persons closest to us that can be an evil influence. Ahab sold himself to do evil, and he was being influenced and urged on by Jezebel. Jezebel was a negative influence in his life. In Further on in chapter 22 of 1 Kings, chapter 22 and verse 51. In the 17th year of King Jehoshaphat's reign over Judah, Ahab's son, Uzziah, became king over Israel in Samaria. He ruled for 2 years over Israel. He did evil in the sight of the Lord and followed in the footsteps of his father and mother. Like Jeroboam, son of Nebat, he encouraged Israel to sin. He worshipped and bowed down to Baal, angering the Lord God of Israel, just as his father had done. His father had influenced him. He did evil in the sight of the Lord and followed in the footsteps of his father and mother. Those were the influences that he had. His father and his mother led to the entire nation of Israel being corrupted. So influence is very, very important. Who do you have in your circle that is a leader and is doing the influencing? Are you a leader or are you just a follower? What is the influence that you are under? Clearly, this type of influence is negative. Sometimes we have associations with people who do good. They might help us when we need help and so on, financially and otherwise. But they have a particular weakness. They have a particular weakness that threatens the relationship that we have with God. We don't want to lose those benefits of their friendship, but we have a tough choice to make. Either we give up those benefits or we are led off into destruction. Look around you, the direction that others are going. Who are the people around you? What direction are they going in? I want to touch briefly on a second principle. This has to do with long-term failure with sin. Now the preacher spoke, I've had to amend some of the things that I intended to say. He spoke and touched on some of it. But the long-term failure, sure we want to come to the Passover acknowledging that Jesus paid it all. But make no mistake about it, there's something for us to do. If we are not participants in our own salvation, we won't make it. In 1 Corinthians chapter 5, reading from verse 6, 1 Corinthians chapter 5, from verse 6. Your boasting is not good. Don't you know that a little yeast affects the whole batch of dough? Clean out the old yeast so that you may be a new batch of dough. You are in fact without yeast, for Christ, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed. You have this one little problem that you have been battling with for how long? But because you are doing well in so many other areas, you become content. Let me tell you about one little iota of sin that is left to fester. It grows and it grows. And it can creep up on you silently. Before you know it, you feel trapped and overpowered. You have no power to fight it off. And you fall. This year as we approach Passover, each of us should be thinking, are there any long-term issues that we have? Perhaps you have become comfortable with those long-term issues, saying, well, I've been battling this for 5 years now, for 10 years, for 15 years, and I'm still here, so I haven't left. I'm here every week. And well, I've been having this problem now for 10, 15 years. It doesn't stop me from serving and doing other things. It's just, I mean, anybody that does a test, anybody that goes to through high school, university, and gets 9 out of 10. I mean, that's more than a pass mark, right? And none of us are perfect. So, yeah, I have this one problem, but I'm still in the race. Yeah? Let me tell you about that one left unchecked. It creeps up on the other 9. It creeps up on the other 9, and like pressure, it requires an outlet. It requires an outlet. Like any secret illnesses that you have, it's when the symptoms have gotten advanced that you realize. Do take it for granted that you're still here, even though you are battling that one issue. That one issue could outdo the other 9 issues that you have perfected. So scripture says, your boasting is not good. A little leaven leavens the whole lump. Another issue that a number of us face has to do with boredom. Boredom is experienced in many different ways. A church like us will always have difficulties. Because unlike the other churches, our focus is not on health and wealth and those things. We teach a lot of prophecy and so on. Unfortunately, some of our teachers have been headline prophets, making predictions like Christ's return is just around the corner, and it hasn't happened. When that fails, lethargy sets in. It's unfortunate that they have led us in this way, but that is where we find ourselves. It is not an easy thing to be coming here week after week, week after week, doing the same things, hearing the same sermons, hearing the same messages. But I tell you what, to be successful in any endeavor, everybody has to learn to deal with repetition. You see, even those flashy artists that you see, musicians and so on, that seem to be reeling off hits after hits on the charts and have one song knocking off another song off the charts, is after they have done 200 songs and 2 of them are successful. Don't be carried away by the music videos that you see them in. That's not what they live all day long. That is an illusion. In order to be successful, you have to spend a lot of time writing, going through material. When you come up with a song, then you have to find a beat for it that matches it. Hours in the studio. Hours. They're not out partying every night. The ones that try to do that fame seem to come quickly too, they tend to burn out very quickly and are forgotten. But look at the successful ones that have longevity. They have to be at it day and night. Our athletes, our Jamaican athletes, they don't just get up and fly to the World Games and the Olympics and then compete. It's not the times when you see them lining up on the track that the hardest work takes place. You know how boring it is to have to get up 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, especially the time now. The time now is kind of chilly. And the nights are long. My program was falling off because of that. And I know the change of time just don't suit me. And traffic from Portmore with all of the roads under construction. But I realized if I was to stick to it, I had to meet the challenge. So I have started now getting up after 4. Sometimes you step outside and a cold breeze licking, you want to go straight back in your bed. But because I said I want to give myself a better chance with my health, I go out there. Because my mother died at 51 of breast cancer, and my father passed away because of complications of diabetes. And my diet is not the best. to put it mildly. I have a sweet tooth. So I have to put in the work. I have to put in the work to give myself any kind of chance. So sometimes when the alarm goes off and it's 4:30, I really don't want to go out in the cold, you know. I have the warm bed and a lovely wife beside me. Running around a field in a circle, in a circle, in a circle, in a circle. It's not very appealing. 4:30 in the morning. Yes, I have to watch. I've gone back over there and I'm like keeping an eye out for the crocs. Yeah, because crocodiles sometimes come up on that field. And the alternative to that is when I go to work, there's a treadmill. Let me tell you, running like I do for 38 minutes straight on a treadmill, increasing the speed constantly, is one of the most boring things that you can do. It's one of the most boring tasks you can ever undertake. I do it for 30 odd minutes at a time. I do 3 miles on it every morning I go there. But to motivate yourself to get up and do the same thing every morning, it's not easy to get yourself mentally prepared. But do I want to get a medical prognosis like my parents? No. I don't want that. And even if I don't get the medical prognosis, I don't necessarily want to be like some other people I see, and every walk I walk, my love handles are jumping, and I really don't. Yeah. No offense to anybody else, but I don't want that. I don't want that for myself. You know, I haven't reached my goal, but I'm doing a little something to help myself, right? See, I took in this suit for I took in this suit for the feast, and I say already I'm going to have to take it in again. No, that's good. Progress. That's good. That's progress. But that progress doesn't come easy. It doesn't come easy. It takes a level of dedication to get up. Some of the other drivers curse me in the mornings because I don't go and get myself checked off early enough, because no matter what, I am going to do the treadmill. Let me tell you about going through the process over and over again. I saw a video this week of 2 police officers. They were in a mall in somewhere in Florida. They were in the mall, and a mother suddenly noticed that her child wasn't breathing. And she panicked. She didn't know what to do. And one of the police officers jumped into action. He tried the Hemlock maneuver, that's the name of it. Heimlich maneuver. Was trying with the child, but 2 minutes and no result. He just continued to do the same thing, though he didn't try anything different. He just continued at it, and the child started to turn blue. And people started to console the mother. It's over. But he kept trying and trying. And eventually, on the 3rd minute, the child coughed up the blockage and came back to. Some people commenting on the video are saying they were upset because the police officer wasn't doing the technique properly. That's why it took so long. Oh. And they were upset watching that police officer go through it improperly. Now, how did that officer, even if he didn't master the technique, how did he come by to be able to perform the task? It's because in that county, it is required that every 2 years, officers undergo training for that particular emergency. It was his training that kicked in. Sometimes we have to do things that it seems that we are never tested on. But you never know when you'll be required to call upon that particular training. So sometimes we gather here week after week, and preachers are going through things that we have heard already. We've heard it all. You know, can't they come with some new info now and spice it up a bit, and let's get into some prophets. You know, a lot of things are happening on the world stage, and you want to be titivated and titillated some more. And yes, we should try to do better, and we're all trying to do better. And we're grateful for your support thus far. But listen, in order to be successful, you have to be able to go through repetition and even boredom. You see, if you cannot take it, you might eventually leave the church and feel justified. We are on a mission. Don't forget, we don't just turn up for church to do obeisance to God. That's not the be all and the end all of us gathering here. All of you are in training. Training requires that you repeat the task. Many police officers join the force from a young age, retire, and never once fire their pistol. Not even one. No, people on the beat. We might be under the impression that every police officer is trigger up and shoot off at people from time to time, you know. But there are many of them that have never fired a shot. No.
Jamaica?
Yes, man, you're Jamaica. A policeman, I was shocked when a policeman first told me that he has never fired a shot. I was very shocked. I thought every policeman was like Cowboy Tex, two-gun kid. I thought all of them fire. A policeman, he has never fired a shot and has been in the force many, many years. But you tell me, if a police officer has never been confronted and he has been in the force 20, 25 years, should he stop going to the range? Do you think he should stop going to the range?
Be alert.
Do you think that he should stop doing any kind of training? No, because at any time, some aspect of his training may be required. Sometimes I wonder about the JDF that we have in Jamaica, the JDF.
Very active.
You see them all, but what does the JDF really do?
Fight war.
Soldiers really are for war, right? And we do have that type of war. Our thing is more gang-related. It's more urban gang-related thing. But the JDF is there all the time training. Now they do some type of rescue assistance and those things, right? But you never know when some kind of dispute might erupt and they'll be called upon to defend the country. If we and some other neighbor have some dispute, where are they going to go? At that time, you're going to call up citizens and say, let's have training? No. We can't do that. And the number one function of government is to keep the citizens safe. So they are necessary, even though they have never been called into action. Us as members need to understand that what we are doing here is preparation for something more and something higher. We cannot be caught up in the spirit of the age. If it isn't exciting and I'm not feeling it, I need to go find somewhere else where I can feel it and have some fun. By the way, just as an aside, even us being in church here, you see, even our very approach to worship is indicative. Many of you might not know, but just over 100 years ago, people didn't worship to feel good. That was not the approach to worship. That's a fairly recent phenomenon where people expect that the worship must give them a certain something. That was not how worship was approached. Worship was meant to give to God. Worship wasn't meant for us to be getting something. So be careful in not worshiping yourself. Do know what your worship is supposed to be for and where it is supposed to be directed. Who is supposed to be the recipient of your worship? Who is supposed to be the recipient? Be sure that what you are directing is to God. No, I know we borrow from other churches from time to time and so on, and we generally take good elements. but be sure that what they are saying is in line with our view.
Praise God.
Be careful that what you take from them is in line with our theology. I've become very skeptical of them. Number of the lyrics are geared towards feel good and health and wealth and that kind of thing. They do, and some of them are telling God, dictating to God the script that God is supposed to write to them. Sure. They are telling God what kind of test paper they must get. Yes. And they are telling him how to mark the test paper. Yes. We give God sovereignty over our lives. We don't dictate to God what he gives to us. He just has to be faithful to his promises. Some of these songs demand from God. That's not true worship. So don't be caught up in the banging of the drums and the strumming of the instruments. Be careful that this is not a substitute for some boredom. If you cannot stand up to boredom, you won't last. It is important that our focus and our influences before the better good. Let me tell you about boredom. Some of us cannot stand to be alone. We can't stand it. One of the lessons that came to me when I sent my son and he told me that those last set of neighbors had migrated. One of the things that came to me was that increasingly I'd have to be prepared to come home to an environment that had less people. Increasingly. Now loneliness, I'm not lonely because I don't have the neighbors, right? But there is a sense, when you have a sense of community and people around you. All right, we are here. All the chairs are filled and people are waiting to come in. It lends a certain excitement. Do you get discouraged if the chairs become half empty? Do you require the chairs to be filled, to be passionate in just the same way? Are you the kind of person that can stand on your own? If myself and the other leaders fail, can you still be enthusiastic about God?
That's one.
Can you still have that fervor? Or will you say, well, the leaders have a certain knowledge base and they have departed the faith. Surely there's something that they know or they have given up. They were so strong.
Yes.
And if they can fall prey to whatever, what chance do I have? Do you see yourself in that way? Or do you see yourself as being able to master your own faith? Can you stand alone? How much repetition and boredom can you stand? In 2 Samuel chapter 11, reading from verse 1. 2 Samuel chapter 11. In the spring of the year, at the time when kings normally conduct wars, David sent out Joab and his officers and the entire Israelite army. They defeated the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David stayed behind in Jerusalem. Notice, this is the season for war. Because of the cold winter, soldiers don't normally go out to battle. Right? Because the battle in the elements would be too difficult. So springtime is normally war season. At that time in history. One evening David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of his palace. From the roof he saw a woman bathing. Now this woman was very attractive. You all know the rest of the story. David ended up doing a despicable thing. He slept with the woman, and when she conceived, they didn't have any morning after pill at that time. And when she conceived, he sent for her husband and tried to get the man a jacket. The man never take the jacket, so he set up the man and caused the man's death. That to me is one of the most despicable things that occurred in the Bible. One of the most despicable things. But how did David get to that position? The root of it is from verse 1. In the spring of the year, at the time when kings normally conduct wars, David stayed at home. This is a warrior and I'm supposed to be out in the field. Leaders at that time were not like leaders now. Like US fights many wars and the president stays in the White House and sends out soldiers.
War rooms.
In that time, Trump had to be on the battlefield.
Oh, yes. Feel it.
At that time, Trump had to be leading the troops into battle. It was a different time. This is a warrior. Now, war is extremely energetic. War is intense adrenaline rush. It's a kind of high, almost like drugs, when you go into war, especially that kind of hand-to-hand combat, because your life is on the line. Your life and limbs are on the line. It's not. Remember, swords and a sharp implement. You ever get cut by a knife or a paper cutter or something and see how painful that is? Well, these are people who spend them evenings sharpening down the swords. Sharpening down. And there's a man who knows that if he's not good when he faces you, he's going to die. He doesn't want to die. He wants to go back home to his family. And so you face off each other in battle. So there's a high from that. No, he's used to that high from early on. He was killing bears and so on. Killed Goliath, had won many wars. Here he was now, his fellow warriors were out in the field. So he didn't have this normal company either, you know. It's not only that he wasn't at war now, but his normal friends around him, they were at war. He sent out Joab and all the fellow warriors. Where was he? At his home, reclining. What do you think is going to happen as a result of that? Boredom set in. He is bored. And he's looking for things to do, and he's looking for excitement. So the devil find work for idle hands. He was looking for excitement, and excitement did come his way. But it was very painful for him in the end. Why wasn't he able to overcome this? Because he couldn't take the boredom of sitting at home when all his comrades were out fighting. He was off his mission. He couldn't handle the boredom. No, I'm not just telling you this because I may be a boring preacher, but no doubt I'm telling you it for your own good. Similarly, doctors. Doctors go through intense training for years. But some of the things that they learn and some of the symptoms to detect and some of the diseases they learn to cure, they might never encounter, or at least for a long while. Somebody comes to them with a symptom that they are not used to, and their life is on the line. If they found a particular lecturer boring, that lectured on that subject, and never paid attention, you don't be the unfortunate person that got to them with that rare symptom. If they never paid attention in class, your life is dependent on the attention that they paid to detail. So if they weren't attentive, you are in trouble. So you and I depend on others who can endure boredom. Many of the things that we benefit from is a result of others who have to stay up at night. If people are not prepared to come out 1, 2 o'clock in the mornings to do certain things. For people who live in Portmore like myself, and sometimes the nights are hot and you need the fan for 2 reasons, depending on where you live. To cool down and to ward off the mosquitoes. When the light gone 1 o'clock in the morning, boy, and you don't know when it's coming back, it's pure torture. But somebody has to be on call to be prepared to take a call and go out there 1:30 in the morning to climb up in the darkness on a pole to sort it out, or you will be livid. You'll have a torturous night. Make no mistake about it, everybody has to endure it. And if you are successful in life anyway, you have to go through that. That's a process, and that's part of the testing that God is giving you. Go back to the first scripture that I read, the king of Tyre. If it's an allegory for Satan, guess how many thousands of millions of years he was perfect for? Guess how many years he was in a state of perfection and still failed. God does not want anybody like him again. We get 70 years to live, and you can't endure a few moments of boredom here. What good are you to God? What statement are you sending to God? How can he use you if you have to be on a constant high? You have to be partying, you have to be hearing loud music all the time. You're no use to God. And increasingly, you won't be any use to yourself either. Because people who can't endure the repetition tend to burn out quickly. People who need a constant high tend to be burnt out rather quickly. The last thing I want to touch on is faith. Faith is a very difficult thing when you endure so many things. In recent years, our congregation has been through quite a bit of trauma. We have handled it very well. We have had an elder fall away. We have had our leader die, and we have buried quite a few other persons, all in the last 5 or 6 years. That can lead to doubt. Let's be honest with ourselves. That can lead to doubt about what God is doing. Some of us can be led to wonder. And then we want to ask ourselves, is the sacrifice worth it? Let me tell you the reality. I started visiting in about 1992. And this is roughly 27 years later. For those of you starting out now, add 27 to that. Add it. Some maths will tell me which year is that. Somebody tell me? That's what about 2048? 2048? That's the year 2048. Now we don't know if and when we don't know when Christ is returning, which year. We don't know. Right? We proceed in faith. Are you prepared to be here doing the same things in 2048? Think about it. Are you prepared to be coming to services, going through the same things till 2048? I would be approaching about 80 at that time, close to it. Can I go through another 27 years? No, that's for me to answer. You need for you to answer that for yourself. You ever think about it? Time seems to have flown so fast. Time seems to have flown by so fast. But let me tell you, when your mind is not actively engaged, it can seem to stretch out forever. So ask yourself, what does it require for you? I can't answer that individually for you because I don't know your individual challenges. But I lay out to you what are some of the principles. Some of the principles. We have to be able to be an influencer of the persons around us. We have to have faith in the promises of God that He'll come through. We have to endure boredom. Christ was given a task to come to earth. It was His passion to preach the gospel, but He also knew that He was destined to die. He sent, the night before His death, He sent for His disciples. They couldn't stay up. And when He was arrested, they fled. As we prepare for the Passover, think about what that must have taken. Imagine if everybody else, look around you, look at the faces. Imagine if everybody else denounces the faith, but you still feel a passion for it. You still feel a passion that it is true, but others have reached a state where they no longer care. What can you do? What would you do? Each of us has to be prepared to ask ourselves that question. I think with sadness about many of the persons that I came and saw here, and many that have come and have left. I do not know that as myself and Stephen are training to be at the helm, that we'll be able to stop that. It's not likely. But we cannot be discouraged, because it is not just our own walk. There's a spiritual component in all of this. There is a responsibility that we have, and there is a reliance that we must have on God as well. Amen. If we are to be successful. Yes. In Romans chapter 12, reading from verse 1. Therefore I exhort you, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, alive, holy, and pleasing to God, which is your reasonable service. Do not be conformed to this present world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may test and approve what is the will of God, what is good and well-pleasing and perfect. Test everything. Examine your lives. See where you are. As I have less persons to call upon as a resource, as I said, the bond between myself and Pastor Boyne was more than just how we related here. There's a bond that David and Jonathan had. There's a bond that you can have with somebody that is close to you. It can be very difficult to continue when you lose that bond. But I've had that bond before, and I've had to say goodbye for other reasons. It is painful. I remember the theme song from the Titanic, "My Heart Will Go On." It's difficult when our circle seems to be closing. Now, we're not really experiencing that, but the quality of the friendships, there are certain types of friendships that you'd like to have that help to enhance you. What happens if that is not available? Now, I could find elements of that, as a man who loves sports and music and that kind. I could find elements of that, lots of other persons that share that. But what other influence would they have on me? Most other persons that I know my age that have those kinds of interests have a different outlook from me. They tend to be sexually promiscuous and so on. If I'm in need of a certain kind of fellowship and associate with these people, spend a lot of my time, how am I going to end up? I have to ask myself that. I close in 1 Peter chapter 5. 1 Peter chapter 5, words for us to arm ourselves with as we prepare for the Passover. Be sober and alert. Your enemy, the devil, like a roaring lion, is on the prowl, looking for someone to devour. Resist him. Be strong in the faith, because you know that your brothers and sisters throughout the world are enduring the same kinds of suffering. Yeah, it's a difficult time. Ever since the passing of Herbert Armstrong, the church has become more and more and more splintered and scattered. And the generation that had the greatest passion to establish the church is dying off. That is a reality. The baton has been passed to us. The odds of us completing our mission are greater, are less. The odds do not favor us. It gets worse. But it's only the strong that will survive. It is only those who are passionate, those who are not easily influenced, those who can withstand repetition, that don't require a drum to keep their faith. It is those that, because they don't find the music most exciting, they start to tune into TBN more than before, and then other messages start to creep in. I give you a warning. Be careful about the emotional crutches that you need to sustain your faith. And after you have suffered for a little while, the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. To him belongs the power forever and ever. Shalom.